mayor.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for the October 24th, 2024 Apple Valley City Council meeting. Welcome everyone this evening as we get to the items on the agenda. For those who have signed up to speak, when your name is called, please come forward and address the council at the podium. With that, the first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask everyone to rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. And Tom, any changes this evening?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have no changes to tonight's
Great,
agenda.
thank you. I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. And our next item is the audience participation portion of the meeting. This is for items that are not on the agenda. We have a total of 10 minutes for this item. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but we will offer if anyone would like to speak at this portion of the meeting for items not on the agenda, please come forward now. All right, seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine and will be enacted with a single motion unless a council member or a citizen requests to pull an item. We'll start with our council members. Are there any items you'd like to pull from the consent agenda this evening? And citizens in the audience, any items to pull? All right, seeing none. We have a motion for approval for the consent. Do we have a second?
Second.
So a motion from Councilmember Melander, a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed to the consent items, all pass, which moves us to the regular agenda. Our first item is 5A, which is BSK Inc., DBA Berry Sweet Kitchen, 14638 Cedar Avenue. And it is a public hearing and resolution approving a liquor license. And Christina.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm pleased to be here this evening to bring forward a liquor license application from BSK Inc., doing business as Berry Sweet Kitchen, located at 14638 Cedar Avenue, Suite 150. The public hearing for consideration of this on-sale liquor license and special license for Sunday liquor sales has been published, and an affidavit of publication has been received. The police department and fire department have conducted their investigation and inspection, and they have determined that there is no reason to deny the license at this time. We ask that the City Council hold a public hearing and then consider approval of this on-sale liquor license and special Sunday liquor license.
Wonderful, thank you. We will go ahead and start by opening the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this item? Anyone who would like to speak to the public hearing? All right, one final opportunity. We'll close the public hearing, and I would look for a motion to adopt the resolution approving the issuance of on-sale intoxicating liquor and special license for Sunday liquor sales.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Bergman and a second from Councilmember Goodwin. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I would like to, our applicants are in the audience, I would like to invite them up and just tell us a little bit about the business that you've got. I know you did a bit of a soft open and you're excited to get this piece going. So come on up, introduce yourself, and welcome to Apple Valley.
Hi, guys. I go here.
Go here so the camera will pick you up.
Okay. Thanks for letting us be here, guys. And we're starting a breakfast and lunch restaurant, and people have to have their mimosas. So mimosas and Bloody Marys, and that's why we need the liquor license. And we have another restaurant in South Minneapolis, and we're hoping this one, we've had a lot of success there, and we're hoping to have success here. So this is a big first step. So really appreciate you guys approving this.
Welcome. You've had good reviews early. Location, the address might not mean anything to those who right, just heard the digits and the address, but you're in the retail center that's the north side of 147th and Cedar, kind of next to where Buffalo Wild Wings is. Applebee's, kind of right in that
Guys.
center. Yep.
Good location.
And you're open 6 days a week, I understand, everything but Monday, right? And breakfast and lunch.
Yep.
Good deal. Welcome to Apple Valley, and we look forward to it. John, go ahead.
This morning, the wife and I had the pleasure of visiting the restaurant, and it is interesting and it is very good. We were there around 10:30ish, and by 11 o'clock there was a lot of people walking in and out of your facility. So the food is very good. Again, the concept that you have produced. Once this liquor license goes through, really will, I think, is a draw that we don't really have in this city. So it's interesting, and welcome and thank you.
And for those watching, waiting to go get their mimosa tomorrow morning, just hit pause on that just a second. They've got to get this through the state, get their card, right? They got a few things left to do first, so don't go knock the door down tomorrow morning looking for your mimosa. It's going to take them a few days to get there.
I can make you a virgin Bloody Mary.
There you go.
With no vodka, but I'm going to have that tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to 5B, which is a slate of items related to our cannabis ordinance amendments. And Alex and Christina are going to apparently tag team this one. So come on up and we'll get started.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, this is an item that Christine and I are working on together, as there are multiple multiple ordinance amendments to this. So we are looking for 3 different actions this evening. The council may hold off waiving the second reading if they'd like, however, if there are any concerns. I'm going to go through this very, very quickly because the council has seen most of these dates before. So, I can linger on them if you have any questions, but I'm going to try to move through it very promptly. In 2023, the state legislature adopted a statute that allowed for the legalization and possession, use, manufacturing, and sale of cannabis. That's what's kind of kicked this off. The city then put in, through ordinance, a moratorium restricting the retail sale of cannabis products until January 1, 2025, which has been our timeline for developing our local ordinance. On this one, the key aspect here is that we have met with City Council previously in a work session to go through 3 primary policy directions related to the zoning ordinance that helped guide the ordinance for both Planning Commission and staff. I'll linger a little bit longer on this one because council has not seen some of these dates yet other than in their packet. September 19th, 2024, the public hearing at the Planning Commission was held for the zoning portion of the ordinance amendments. We then tabled the item and brought it back to the next meeting on October 2nd, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended that draft ordinance. Tonight, again, we are looking for 3 ordinance amendment updates. You can waive the second reading, but just so that you're aware, we do have backup dates in case you do have questions, so the council is not in no way obligated to act on that. For now, I'll hand off briefly to Christina.
Mayor and Council, we thought it would be helpful at this juncture to kind of walk through the overall licensing process for cannabis businesses because there are different pieces of city regulations that fall into different parts of this licensing process. So the first step for a cannabis business is applying for a license pre-approval with the Office of Cannabis Management. So that includes the background checks and other pieces that the Office of Cannabis Management does to make sure that that business entity or person is eligible for a license. Once that business has that license pre-approval, they have 16 months to apply for a final license. So then at that point, they go out and start selecting a location and applying for local approvals. So that's where our zoning regulations come into play. Right? If a cannabis business had a pre-approval and came to the city of Apple Valley, they would work with the Planning and Community Development Department to make sure that our zoning codes and receive any planning entitlements that they need. We expect at that point, likely the business is signing a lease, also getting building permits, making sure that they have their approvals from the city. At that point, then they go back to the Office of Cannabis Management and apply for their final license. So then that is actually licensing that specific business location. The OCM at that point contacts the city to confirm conformance with zoning, building, and fire code. And the city has 30 days to say, yes, they did what they're supposed to do. They have all of their entitlements and their building and fire code permits. And if they don't, then we say, no, they haven't met those requirements, and the licensee needs to come back to us. And then once the OCM issues the final license, then the cannabis business registers with the city. And so that's where the city clerk's office becomes involved, because the city clerk's office will be accepting in those registrations and making sure that they meet our registration requirements and basically our kind of business regulations, and that's in our business section of the code. So it's a lot of back and forth, and there's a couple different departments at the city level that are involved whenever we would have a cannabis business come into town. And I should note that that registration is only applicable to a retail cannabis business. And it also applies to the low potency hemp edibles as well.
Thank you for that. So again, council did see these policy recommendations, so I'm going to move through them relatively quickly, so feel free to interrupt me if you do have any questions on something specific. We brought this forward to city council previously. The policy direction is, should we limit the number of retail cannabis locations within the community? State statute allows us to do so, 1 per 12,500 residents. Council directed yes. Planning Commission affirmed that decision. That is included in the draft ordinance. They unanimously agreed with that assessment. The second one was, should the city implement buffers from sensitive uses as outlined in state statute? City Council recommended to staff and the Planning Commission that we place on the maximum buffers allowed by statute. Planning Commission studied this, affirmed that action. City Council then went on further to ask the Planning Commission to study whether we should have an additional buffer between retail sale locations or dispensaries of 500 or 1,000 feet, or any number potentially in between. This took a little bit more study from the Planning Commission. You'll see a map next, where we were able to affirm that you could still meet that 5 minimum locations, but Planning Commission recommended the 1,000-foot buffer to mimic the 1,000 feet from schools. We did check that we can still fit the minimum of 5 locations. In fact, we can fit around 13. So we're still in good shape. We will never be out of conformance with state statute. If you do have questions on the map, we can go to it in greater detail. There's a little bit, it gets washed out on the screen a little bit, so you'll see it a little bit better in the council packet or online, but we were able to create a map. The one explanation that I want to provide to this map, because it has changed a little bit since when council first saw it, is that only the relevant buffers are shown on the map right now. So in areas where a park is located but no retail is located, you don't see a buffer. And that's done purposely just to make the map a little bit more legible for council and the public. We will be utilizing this and putting it online. We are working with GIS to see whether we are going to have the demand of actually creating a dynamic map so that users could check a location on their own. That being said, we only have 5 locations and limited staff resources, so we do want to be respectful of that. It may stay more static. The final item is, which zoning districts should cannabis retail sales and other cannabis uses be permitted within? The basic rule of thumb here is that if it's an agriculture operation, it can occur in an agricultural zone. If it's a production and manufacturing, industrial, similar to any of those others, retail to retail. And so that's what we've gone with, as we've treated cannabis essentially like any other retail sale, minus those buffers and other restrictions. We do have the table next if you do have any of the questions on it. It's a lot of information for a slide, so I'm not going to linger on it for too long. Yeah, it's not as pretty, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
With that, we did hold a public hearing, and I wanted to summarize because we had one comment from outside. That comment was concerned about a definition, and the city attorney went back and amended that definition. We sent it on to that person that expressed concern on the definition, and they expressed support of the amended change. So that has alleviated all public comment the city has received to date on the ordinance. There was one additional question that both the Planning Commission and City Council had, which was, let's say you are one of those licensed businesses, you've moved in, you've done everything with us, and then a daycare moves in across the street. And what happens with that? Both City Council made note of it in your work session, and Planning Commission really kind of struggled with that one. So we included a provision that specifically states that if you're a licensed location, you're in that location, and then a sensitive use moves in next door, you get to stay. It was already probably inherently that way, but now it's explicitly stated in our ordinance. Now it's Christina's turn to kind of finish things off.
Yes, so now we move over into the retail registration portion of the city code, and that's the second ordinance amendment that's before you for consideration this evening. So as I mentioned earlier, the Office of Cannabis Management issues licenses to retail cannabis businesses and retail lower potency hemp edible businesses. After the license issuance, those retail businesses are required to register with the city. So this ordinance notes what our registration requirements are and says that if they are met, then the city clerk shall issue the registration. If a registered business violates city codes or code or poses an imminent threat to public health or safety, the city is allowed under state statute and our ordinance to suspend that registration for up to 30 days and work with the Office of Cannabis Management if additional follow-up is required. And under the law, OCM must have an expedited complaint process and review process for any complaints that come in from cities. And so we are allowed to say for 30 days we're going to pause this registration, you may not sell, and then work with the Office of Cannabis Management should we have non-compliant businesses within our city. So the registration regulations themselves, these are some of the highlights. We also echo in the registration regulations that there are no more than 5 retail registrations for cannabis, retail businesses. That only applies to the cannabis businesses, not to the lower potency hemp edible businesses. We require compliance with zoning code. We require an initial inspection before registration is issued. We require that lower potency hemp edible retail businesses keep their products, except for beverages, displayed behind a checkout counter or in a locked case. So if you're in a gas station, something like that, you can't just self-serve those lower potency hemp edible products. We have requirements that retail cannabis businesses can be open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's as restrictive as we can be in state statute or per state statute. We require that consumption or use of cannabis on the property of the business or that on a temporary cannabis event, we prohibit those. So there isn't any sampling, there isn't any other use that's happening within a cannabis retail business. And then we require that we conduct annual age verification compliance checks, just as the same as we do with liquor and tobacco, and those, again, are being done on an annual basis. We will also be, in our 2025 proposed fee schedule, bringing forth registration fees. It made sense to discuss those at tonight's meeting, but because we have a moratorium on retail sales of cannabis products, we don't need to put these registration fees into place right now. So you don't have an ordinance or, a resolution in front of you right now to adopt these fees, but we did want council to have the opportunity to think about them and provide feedback, and then you will see these incorporated into the proposed 2025 fee schedule that'll come later in December. These are the maximum fees that we are allowed to charge under state statute. The initial license fee includes the business's first renewal. So we expect to see some revenues in 2025, especially since we know we already have lower potency hemp edible businesses that would pay that $125 initial license fee. And then those businesses, they renew with us annually, but they don't need to pay another renewal fee or license fee until their second renewal. The third ordinance that the council has in front of them this evening is really more of a housekeeping ordinance. It doesn't directly relate to the retail sales or to the zoning ordinance, but it does clarify that in the city's drug paraphernalia ordinance, that those prohibitions that are in that ordinance do not apply to cannabis equipment that is allowed under Minnesota statutes. So we wanted to, while we were here talking cannabis, make sure we were cleaning up all of our ordinances and complying with Chapter 342.
With that, we have the 3 actions for you this evening, and if council so wishes, they may waive the second reading for each one of these.
Thank you both. That was a lot, but also very well done for the amount of information that was there. So we'll start with council questions before we take the action items, if there are any. We've been through this going on a year, so if we all look like we have eyes glazed over, no pun intended, that it's because we've seen this information multiple times, lots of work from staff to get here, lots of work from Planning Commission, others to kind of get us to this point. And I'll just say that this was driven by changes in state law, not something that we undertook as an initiative, but something we need to do to react to changes in state law. So, Councilmember Goodwin?
And some of the things we should realize are state mandates. For example, I've had citizens say to me, you have to have 5 marijuana stores, you only got 3 liquor stores. I said, well, that's a mandate. The state says we must. So I hope people recognize that and understand that.
Very literally everything in here is a state mandate, so.
Yes, everything's a state mandate, but that's one that, when I mention to friends of mine, they say, well, you can have 5 marijuana stores, you only got 3 liquor stores. And I said, well, that's a mandate.
Thanks, Tom. Councilmember Bergman?
Thanks, Mayor. To staff, any comments from the general public during the planning commission or
No.
to you at all?
Just one.
Just, that's it.
Mayor Hoopa, Councilmember Bergman. No, there was just the written comment that we received on that definition. There were no other public comment.
Okay, interesting.
All right.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments or questions, let's move on with the items. First one is to pass the ordinance amending Chapter 155 of City Code to add Section 155.320, regulating cannabis businesses, hemp businesses, and cannabis events, and this includes waiving the second reading.
So move.
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Bergman. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that one passes. Second is an ordinance amending, an ordinance amending city code entitled Business Regulations, adding Chapter 121 regarding cannabis and hemp retail businesses, and this also includes waiving the second reading. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Nobody wants to
We have a
move.
motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Bergman. Any additional discussion on item 2? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That item carries as well. And the third is to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 130.06 of City Code entitled Drug Paraphernalia, amending the drug paraphernalia prohibitions, and this also, it would include waiving the second reading. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Councilmember Grendel. Do we have a second?
Second.
From Councilmember Goodwin. Any further discussion on this item? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And that item carries as well. So thank you again, everyone, for the work to get us here tonight. While I try to recover my voice here, we will go on to item 5C, and that is an ordinance amending Chapter 155.350 of the City Code regarding stormwater management. All yours, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Well, I do have 3 ordinances tonight, but I don't think they'll take too much time. So as the mayor said, the first one is Chapter 155.350. So we'll get into it here. Wanted to start out by what's prompting these revisions. These are changes that are required to bring us in, or to be in accordance, I should say, with our MS4 or Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Permit with the state through the MPCA. So that's why these changes are coming forward. And specifically what we're looking at again is Chapter 155.350, drainage requirements in the city code. Now that section has 2 parts to it, one being stormwater runoff design criteria, and the second being impervious surface coverage, basically hard surface coverage requirements. Tonight, the revisions are only dealing with the stormwater runoff design criteria. So those modifications are, we're proposing to remove outdated stormwater runoff design criteria and move the remainder of those into Chapter 152, which I'm going to talk about right after this. Those design criteria that will remain will be replaced with a reference that Sites should follow the drainage requirements as listed in our surface water management plan and also Chapter 152, which again is going to come before you in a moment. Again, the impervious surface coverage is not being changed tonight. That's really it for this one. So I'd stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for Matt on this one? Now, do we want to just take these do you want to go through the rest, or should we just take these as they're in order on the agenda and get them passed?
Yeah, just take them one at a time.
All right, so let's go with, are you ready for us to take this item, Matt, then? So we'll look for a motion to pass ordinance amending Chapter 155.350 of the City Code regulating stormwater management, and that includes waiving the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Grendall, a second from Councilmember Melander. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, that one passes. And we will move on to 5D then.
I'll just wait for it to come up. Yes, thank you again, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is looking at Chapter 152. And what's prompting these revisions, similar to the last one, it's so we stay in accordance with our MS4 or Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Permit from the MPCA. Before I get into the specific changes, I just wanted to mention that because of the sheer amount of changes that are proposed in this to meet the requirements of that state permit, along with the drainage design criteria that I just mentioned was being moved into this from the previous Chapter 155, and also some outdated language that we want to change on the recommendation of the city attorney. It's recommended that we replace in its entirety the old, I'll call it now, Chapter 152, and the new proposal is before you. So it's a completely new language. And probably the most unique revision to this ordinance, something that's being added, is requirements over the storage of road salt on site. So if you think of maybe larger commercial sites in town that may want to store salt over the winter to spread on their parking lot, there's now going to be some requirements for that, obviously because of the relation to stormwater. And so any site, specifically any site that would look to store 5 tons or more of road salt or 1,000 gallons or more of liquid like salt brine or something of that nature, would now have to come into compliance with the new ordinance. And the way we're proposing to do it is through our existing NRMP or Natural Resources Management Permit. There will be temporary seasonal storage permits allowed. We'll also, for sites that maybe plan to do this every year so they don't have to come back and fill out a permit every year, we'll be having a multi-year permit available. Oh, and I did want to go over just a couple examples real quick. The one in the lower left is something we wouldn't like to see, and it's basically a tarp covering a pile of salt with some with some sandbags on it. That's something we wouldn't like to see. So the new requirements would be to be completely covered, like the example on the right. Walls basically all the way around it. Like I said, a roof covering it on a hard surface so it can't soak into the ground. And then we'd also look for containment, hence the doors, so it wouldn't run off into the storm sewer system. So this example is probably more of a permanent structure, but temporary ones would be allowed too, as long as they meet those requirements. A few of the other revisions, additional clarity on what exactly an illicit discharge to the storm sewer system would be, and some examples of that are garbage, yard waste, paints, antifreeze, and salt. So they're defined now as illicit discharges. We also are simplifying the erosion and sediment control requirements as part of our already existing NRMP or Natural Resources Management Permit. We're revising some of the NRMP language to comply with the MPCA construction stormwater permit standards. We're also eliminating outdated terms that are no longer relevant. One example of that is our current or old ordinance has erosion sediment control component. That's now updated to be stormwater pollution prevention plan. Again, current language that the state's using. Another part of Chapter 152 is it covers our forestry requirements, and so a few of those changes are we're modifying the tree replacement requirements to encourage increased diversity and also eliminate outdated language. We're including vegetation establishment as a criteria for closeout process in our NRMP permit. So basically, we want to be seeing the grass and vegetation coming up before we're going to close out an NRMP permit. And then we're revising the hazard tree code to only review trees for hazardous conditions if they would harm public property or users on public property. So what that results in is we would no longer be reviewing private tree disputes between neighbors. I think the council's heard this discussion before. Recommendation of our attorney's office to help limit liability. You have a couple pictures there. The one on the lower right isn't from our city, found on the internet, but it's just an extreme example of one neighbor not liking the tree and the other neighbor liking it. So we're going to stay out of those sort of disputes.
No Christmas cards exchanged there.
No.
I would think
So
not.
happy to take any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions on 152? I think we talk about the runoff, right, and the stormwater piece in here, and I look at the guy pouring whatever it is down the storm drain, and just, you might say, why is this a big deal? You know, all of this goes right to our ponds and our lakes. It doesn't get treated, right? You
Whatever.
might think it goes
Yes.
in the sewer and it gets treated. It doesn't. It ends up right in our waterways and ultimately in our grounds. So pretty important that we manage what's in those places. We can't ever get it back out once it's in there, so.
Definitely.
If there are no questions, we would take a motion to pass the ordinance amending Chapter 152 and waive the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Melander and a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that item carries. And we will go on to 5E, which is an ordinance amending Chapter 51. And all you again, Matt.
Thank you. Yes, as you said, Mr. Mayor, Chapter 51 ordinance revision. So what's prompting this one? Little different, still a state requirement to bring us in accordance with state statutes. This one's also coming from the DNR. Oh, and I should say, it's during a critical water deficiency is what these requirements pertain to. So specifically, these changes are limited to Chapter 51.05G, water use restrictions. Basically, what the revision says is upon the governor's declaration of a critical water deficiency, so say a severe drought or maybe a natural disaster, there would be expanded mandatory watering restrictions that would go into effect. And examples of these are outdoor yard irrigation, misters or play apparatus, similar to the picture on the right there, spraying off of sidewalks or driveways, that would be prohibited, filling of swimming pools, fountains, or other exterior features, washing of vehicles or trucks unless it's at a car wash where there's a recirculating water system. And then the final one is restaurants would be prohibited from serving water unless requested by customers. So no longer could water be automatically on the table during a severe drought or water restriction like this, but you could still order it by request. So
And I'm going to pause you there because Councilmember Melander just hit his light. I want to see if he's got a question on this slide.
I
while
had
you
a
have it up.
question on the first item with outdoor yard irrigation.
yes,
Would that include, I think there's an exemption now for handheld if you're out there with a hose and spraying things down. I'm thinking of gardens and flower beds and, you know, you'd hate to see those die.
yes,
That
that's a,
says you can't do it.
that's a good question. I know our existing code for our normal watering restrictions each year from May through the end of September does allow that. I guess I'm not sure if, I'm not thinking that folks would still be able to do that during, this is an extreme event where the governor's saying basically no one in the state can do outdoor yard irrigation.
These are mandated by these are DNR regs in front of
DNR
us.
and
These are
state
not-
statute. Yes.
These are not items we have a lot of discretion on, so we kind of have to follow what the state is telling us in this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Councilmember Bergman?
To follow up, when I first read this, I looked at this and went, oh, wow, I'm probably illegal on a few of these already, until I went back and you just mentioned it, the governor's declaration. I think that needs to be highlighted, because just looking at it, you're gonna get the impression, Councilmember Melander brings up the outdoor watering, which we can do by hand all day long. But
Correct.
again, I think that needs to be in there some shape or form, but I think it needs to be highlighted that this is a declaration, because first impression was, what in the world, John? So,
Correct.
so I came back and read it.
Correct, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bergman. Yes, this is, again, when the governor declares a critical water deficiency statewide, or I guess if it's only in the metro area, but it's gonna be only during, like I said, severe drought, maybe a natural disaster where there's, something affecting the water system. So the idea is we want to retain our water for obviously drinking and life, and not have it be done for things like car washing and filling of swimming pools and that sort of thing.
So Matt, I don't recall a declaration of this nature in the last quite some time. Do you?
I don't ever remember one in my
we've
career,
had,
but
I just think of the last few dry years, to put it in context, right? We've had a couple very dry years, we've had a very dry fall, we've not seen this declaration, so this is almost an emergency type situation, right? Maybe it's extended drought, maybe like you said, there's a,
exactly.
who knows what, right, that impacts the water supply, and I would imagine
flood
we would be communicating this declarations in order across all of our social media website, right, water notifications, like we use
Radio,
all those
TV
ways
would have, yes.
to get the word out to people, and what you're hoping for is voluntary compliance for the greater good, not riding around issuing a
Yes.
bunch of citations, right?
Mr. Mayor, I can add, if the council wanted, we were proposing waiving second reading. If you had some more concerns, I could check into that question from Councilmember Melander. And if you wanted to hold this up for that, otherwise I could still check into it and let you know following approval of it.
Councilmember Goodwin's question, then we'll come back to the second reading question.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we have to remember, this is just for really severe situations.
Correct.
Yeah, I hope, well, who knows? Well, climate change, maybe we'll hit them, but I don't see something like this coming up very often.
I think our city attorney has some sage advice for us as well.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to Councilmember Melander's question. So the ordinance itself specifically defines the term irrigation, and it would, and again, this is for purposes of the new provision going in, the emergency per the governor. And irrigation does include gardens, lawns, or any other outdoor vegetation. So it doesn't have that exception like our standard 11 to, our summer restrictions. But again, that's only applicable in terms of a water emergency.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
Sharon, what Melander was talking about was standing out there and, let's say, watering his tomato plants.
For instance.
For her, well, she do have a lot of them, but for that
Maybe it's
purpose.
marijuana plants, huh?
But he was, correct me if I'm wrong, he brought up hand watering. I can understand the outdoor yard irrigation sprinkler systems, I totally get that, but Commissioner, you can go and continue.
Well,
I mean, based on what Sharon just told us, in this declaration, right, any outdoor watering would be prohibited in
That's
the event
correct.
of a
Including
declaration
garden.
that none of us have ever seen happen.
And this is gonna happen once in a million.
Well, I totally get it, but you read the top line is outdoor yard irrigation. A sprinkler system is irrigation. Me turning on a faucet, is that irrigation?
According to the definition, yes, it is.
Oh, boy, that stretches it.
Pat, do you have any other slides on this?
No, sir, this was my
Okay,
last.
so,
last one.
so here's
I don't
my
care.
question, Jen, here's my question for the group, right? There is no urgency to do this evening. We're not going to, right, we're coming into winter, we're not gonna have to apply this in the next 2 weeks. We could bring this back for a second reading, in 2 weeks and give people time to mull it over, ask other questions, get all those clarifications, if you all would prefer. I don't think it's gonna change our answer, but we certainly can do that, so I'll leave it up to this group to decide if we want to bring it back for a second reading. Councilmember Melander, you're up.
This is not just me selfishly with my
Tomato
tomatoes,
plants.
and I love tomatoes. But there's folks that invest a lot of money in gardens, and it takes them years to nurture plants to the point that they get them to the point that they want them. And it would be a hardship to essentially kill those gardens that folks have worked hard
So
to.
you want a second reading?
Well,
Just say,
There's no harm in that. If we want more time to make sure we understand what we're passing, we can certainly do that.
wink, wink, nod, nod. Who's going to know if I go out there with a bucket of water? You know,
Agreed.
it's impossible to enforce. You know, for things like that. So
So I just
I
think,
guess I wouldn't nitpick on this. It happens so rarely anyhow, but it just seems a little extreme.
are we comfortable moving forward with now, or do we want a second reading? Just consensus?
I'm comfortable.
Are we okay? Okay. I said there's no harm in delaying this one either, so if we want to get it out there. But it sounds like we understand what it is. We might have some issues in an extreme severe drought that we have some concerns with, right? But kind of understand what we have in front of us.
And Mr. Mayor, like I said, I can still check on that even
Yeah,
after
well,
approval
let's-
tonight, and provide that information to council.
Sounds good.
thank you.
So with that, we have Matt, if you're ready, we have a motion to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 51 of the City Code regulating water use restrictions, and this would include waiving the second reading. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Grendel and a second from Councilmember Goodwin. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That item carries. Thank you. That moves us past the action items. And Matt, thanks for that. That was a lot in one evening and a lot to get there. We also have a little election coming up in the relatively near future. And our city clerk would like to provide some information for our citizens and residents.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm like a bad penny tonight, one more time. I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the general election we have coming up in about a week and a half or so, less than 2 weeks away. And I appreciate the time. Share. The first thing I thought I'd do is share some voting options that residents have here in Apple Valley. So if you're out in the community or folks are watching from home, they know all their different options for voting in the November 5th election. If I can get my mouse. Can you move me forward, Tim?
What?
Works. There. Oh. We'll go slower than that. So we have in-person early voting, which actually began back on September 20th. It's here at the Apple Valley Municipal Center. We are open 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, and then we have a lot of additional hours that are required under state law. So this Saturday we'll be open from 9 to 3. Next Tuesday we're going to be staying open until 7. And then the Saturday and Sunday before the election, we are also open 9 to 3. And then the Monday before the election, we are open until 5. So we are here for our voters, and we are happy to serve them during any of those times if they would like to come in and vote early. We are at the point in the early voting where voters can take their ballot and put it directly into a ballot counting machine. That started last Friday on October 18th. My clicker works, so I'm good now. Thank you. We also are still in a period where voters can request a mail absentee ballot. Those mailed absentee ballot applications are processed by Dakota County, but to complete an application, voters can go to mnvotes.gov and submit an online application for a mail ballot. They can also contact Dakota County directly, either via phone or email, and request an application form and submit an application form via email as well. All of the mailed absentee ballots can either be returned by mailing it back in a postage-paid envelope or by dropping it off at Apple Valley Municipal Center or at one of the county's 3 service centers. Mailed absentee ballots must be received back by 8 p.m. on Election Day. So I've heard some people say, well, it just needs to be postmarked. It has to be in our hands by 8 p.m. on Election Day. So if you are someone who has a mailed ballot and you haven't sent it back yet, you'll want to start doing that soon to make sure that it is received by the county by Election Day. And then, of course, voters have options to vote on Election Day. Tuesday, November 5th is the big day. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Here in Apple Valley, we have 16 different polling locations, and I will note that's different than early voting, right? We get a lot of people here on Election Day who say, well, my neighbors voted here on Sunday. Well, that's correct. For early voting, everything happens at City Hall. On Election Day itself, we have 16 different locations where voters go to cast their ballots. Voters can again visit mnvotes.gov to find their polling location. They're also welcome to call City Hall. And I will note that same-day registration is available for those who are not currently registered. Those voters do need to provide a proof of residence, which are also listed at mnvotes.gov if folks have questions about providing proof of residence and registering on Election Day. Voters have a lot of different resources. The Minnesota Secretary of State's office, mnvotes.gov, has options to check your registration status, to view your sample ballot, find your polling place. You can track your absentee ballot, request an absentee ballot. Dakota County Elections handles military and overseas voters, and they manage the absentee voting process that happens through the mail. And then, of course, here at the City of Apple Valley, we manage in-person early voting. We help voters with special circumstances. Maybe they've been recently hospitalized, they're homebound. We can work with them on their options for receiving a ballot. And then we manage the Election Day voting here in the city. So what have we been doing up to this point to get ready for this election? We've been staffing up. At a previous council meeting, the council appointed about 350 election judges to staff our 16 polling locations. Those election judges are all required to have a 2-hour election judge training course and then a 1.5-hour poll pad lab where they get hands-on experience with the equipment we use to check in and to register voters on Election Day. In addition, we have about 35 head election judges, and because we've had so many elections this year, our head election judges will have had more than 7 hours of training this year before we get to the general election. They're a dedicated group, and we really, really appreciate them. We get assistance in the city clerk's office from a variety of different city departments. Streets, planning, park and recreation. We have a lot of different city staff that assist with our early voting from a variety of different departments, and it's really a team effort, and we very much appreciate it. And I'll say, as running my first election here in Apple Valley, I've just been so excited by the team environment we have here and the enthusiasm we have for making sure our voters receive an excellent service. And then, of course, we have collaboration with Dakota County itself. We have a new JPA that Dakota County has taken over and centralized those absentee voting services, and that is going very well. Every day we have party balanced election judges from the county that courier ballots in a secure fashion. We work very closely and have had very, very good discussions with the county on election night operations and during the day, and they've been very responsive in getting back to all of our questions. So it's been a lovely collaboration this election season with Dakota County, and I think it'll lead to great results on election night. We've also been preparing our equipment. Right? We have our people, we have our equipment. We conducted preliminary testing. That happened 3 or 4 weeks ago. And in our preliminary testing, my staff and I have counted over 3,700 test ballots in our equipment that go out to our 16 precincts. We've tested all of the assistive voting devices that go along with those ballot tabulators, and we've tested our early voting tabulators that we're using for early voting. In addition to all of that testing that we did, we also then held a public accuracy test, which is a publicly noticed meeting. Ours was held on October 15th. Members of the public were welcomed in to observe testing 3 machines. So we had election judges that were party balanced come in, and we pulled those machines out and we went through the entire testing process just as we would during our preliminary testing. And the public could see for themselves and confirm that the ballots that were fed through the machine were counted correctly and appropriately by that machine. After the election, Dakota County will conduct a post-election review. At their canvassing board following the election, they will select precincts at random for hand counting, and that post-election review is also open to the public. The date of the post-election review is set when Dakota County meets to canvass their results after the election. And then just a note on election night results, right? The reason we're all doing this. mnvotes.gov is your best resource for election night results. As soon as they are ready to go, that is where they are pushed out, and that's where I myself go to see what our election night results are. And a reminder for everybody, right? Election night results include results from a variety of different voting methods. We have results from the ballots that are cast via the mail. the ballots that are cast via early voting, both here at the city and at the county locations. And then we have ballots that are cast in polling places on election day. So all of those results from all of those different methods of voting need to be merged together before the county is legally allowed to push those to the Secretary of State's office and have those be reported out. So those results will be reported out after all of our mail-in absentee ballots have been processed and after all voters in line at 8 p.m. have voted. I remember the very first election that I ran, my husband texted me at 8:05 and said, "Who won?" And I said, "Oh, everybody hasn't even voted yet, right? If you get into your polling place by 8 p.m. and you're in line, you're allowed to vote." So sometimes we can't even close that polling machine and do our closing work until, 8:25, 8:30 if we have a longer line in a polling place. So everybody wants to know, what's our current turnout? Where are we right now? I just ran these numbers before our meeting tonight. We have 36,607 registered voters here in Apple Valley. And as of the end of the day today, 7,840 of them have already cast their ballots. So that is currently a 21.4% turnout.
That's good.
Of those ballots that have already been cast, about 30% of those voters are coming in to cast them in person here at City Hall. About 33% of them are being cast by mail, and then another 37% are being cast in person at county service centers. And with that, I'm available for any questions, but I just want to say thank you to the City Council and to our wonderful community for all the support of elections that we have here.
Thank you to your.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Nice job.
Nice job.
Any questions? You might not have left any questions at all with all that good information, so.
Thank you
might
very
answer
much.
them all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to our staff and council communication items. And Tom, I know you've got a couple teed up and ready.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have two to offer up tonight, and we'll start with an event that occurred here earlier today. Get those slides up. So Dakota County has been working with various cities in the preparation for the North Creek Greenway. And this is a long-term, multi-year project. When it is done, it will be a 14-mile trail that will go from Egan through Apple Valley, through Lakeville, and to Farmington. And so as various pieces of this 14-mile trail have been put together, they have been holding certain ribbon cuttings, and today was actually one in Apple Valley. So this is the neighborhood that we have. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is down in Quarry Point Park, so Pilot Knob and 160th Street. This particular trail comes up from the city of Lakeville, crosses underneath County Road 46, gets into the Cobblestone Lake neighborhood, goes around the lake, goes under another tunnel that is already in place on Pilot Knob Road, and then makes its way into Quarry Point Park, and from there north eventually all the way to County Road 42, where there'll be another tunnel put in. So this is a multi-year project. It's one that's very exciting. Most of these trails are separate from the roadways, so it does give a certain experience that's not like just riding a trail along a busy roadway. So today, Dakota County and the Chamber of Commerce and the City of Apple Valley and others came together to celebrate the opening of this particular segment of the trail. And we just want to celebrate with them, thank the county for their work. The Chamber, this trail will connect various businesses in our community. Certainly all of the commercial in the Cobblestone Lake area, all of the commercial in the Orchard Path neighborhood. As it proceeds north, it goes past Abdullah Chocolate. Eventually, it'll go past the Splash Valley Water Park in our park system. And of course, already there's a trail that goes up to the Minnesota Zoo. So it's an aggressive plan, but it's one that is certainly going to be an amenity for our community for many, many years to come. Want to thank this particular land that was the site of this ribbon cutting today is the Rockport property owned by the Fisher family. Certainly they have been a key partner in all of this as well, and making certain that the regional stormwater holding ponds are put into place and those are used as an amenity as the trail works its way through. So right now, as dry as it has been, there is no water in the ponds that are there. But as development occurs and as we get more rain, certainly that will fill up and that will become a great attraction for those that wish to use this particular trail. So next slide, please. So just a couple of images from today, there is a tunnel already in place as well that gets you, again, you don't have to cross a busy roadway to come through this area. And North Creek Greenway signage is up. There will be more signage, wayfinding signage, so you know where you're going. There's even a bicycle maintenance repair station that has been built into there. So if you're on your bike and you need to make some minor improvements as well, there's a station here that's part of this particular project. So we thank everyone who played a part, certainly our staff, community development, engineering, public works. A lot goes into putting together an amenity like this, and happy to celebrate it here today with the group that was out there.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for everybody who showed up out there today. It turned out well. A lot of planning and a lot of time to get here as well. So,
the second one we have, we'd like to invite up our police chief, Nick Francis, to give us a couple of timely reminders of things that are occurring here for this next week.
Tootsie Roll, you got it. No Tootsie Rolls, but lots of other things.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have, as we finalize the month of October, it's been a great month for our department. And on the 26th, we have our annual trunk or treat. This is one of our largest community outreach events where we can connect with so many community members. The weather looks pretty good, around 60, no rain, maybe a little sun, maybe a little clouds, but definitely a good fall day, especially for those kids that have those outdoor costumes on. So it's going to be at Splash Valley Water Park on Johnny Cake Ridge Road from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. There's a little construction down there. It may look a little bit different, and we encourage people to park kind of maybe down toward the teen center or the pickleball courts because it will be a little bit congested up on the top end by the water park where we have to kind of shift a little bit farther out in the parking lot. But come prepared to have a good time, see a lot of public safety and community partners there, and just go trunk to trunk and have a good time. I think there's a couple other events throughout the community on that day. I believe there's one at maybe Valley Middle School. So check your local social media, Facebook sites, but please be sure to stop by our event on Saturday from 11 to 1. And as we round out the month of October, it again is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and our department's supporting the Pink Patch Project. We are selling these pink patches at the police department, $10, and all of those proceeds go to Hope Chest, which is a local nonprofit that supports breast cancer survivors, their families, and so on. Our staff, you'll see us around for the rest of this month with our pink patches. I've been in the schools a lot the last couple of weeks and got a lot of comments from school-age kids, like they notice pink and they notice our uniform and how it's different. So we are having a good time just out in the community. It's been a great opportunity just to connect with folks, and they notice something different, kind of explain a little bit, and make a connection there. So we will do that for the rest of the month of October, then back to our regular uniform shirts, and off we go for the rest of the year. So appreciate the public support and the council support on that. We'll continue to find unique ways to promote these throughout our community.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I think, council, any items from you?
No.
Nope, and Tom, I think that was the last of them? Yes, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is the calendar of upcoming events, and our next informal city council meeting is Tuesday, November 12th at 5:30, and our next regular city council meeting is Tuesday, November 12th at 7. Ruth, did you have something on the calendar to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have National League of Cities, you all know I chair the Energy and Environment Natural Resources Committee, and we started meetings on Tuesday, and we're having a joint meeting also with FEMA on accelerating community recovery after disaster, so I will not be at the meeting.
The next council meeting? Got it, thank you. All right, do we have a motion to approve the calendar of upcoming events?
So moved.
Motion from Councilmember Grandal, a second from Councilmember Goodwin. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the council passed. I will remind everyone that city offices are closed on Monday, November 11th, 2024, in observance of Veterans Day. Our next item is to convene into closed session under the exception to the open meeting law to discuss potential sale and negotiation of city-owned property, the Central Village West Site, which is 7153 152nd Street and 7169 153rd Street. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That item carries. We'll reconvene across the hall in just a few minutes for closed session, and then we'll adjourn from in there. So thank you, everyone.